Hi everyone, Jessie Jordan here, and welcome to my very first sketchbook tour. This is a handbook watercolor journal. It's about 5 inches by 8 inches. I love this type of sketchbook for traveling. It's sturdy, it's weather resistant, it's got this elastic band to keep it secure. It also has a pouch in the back for you to keep some little things that you collect along the way. And it has a canvas cover that I eventually painted with acrylics. As you can see, the cover is pretty weathered. Most of these pages are based in northeastern Madagascar, but I did do some traveling around the country and international as well. This is the inside cover page. I'm usually intimidated to dive right into the cover page, so I'll start a couple pages in. This is actually the very first page I did in the sketchbook, but we'll circle back to that later. So I put my name, the location, and then when I started and finished the sketchbook. It took me a little bit over a year to finish this one, but this is the first sketchbook I completed. I painted this page the first week I moved to Masoala Forest Lodge. And this is just the iconic view that you'd see every day at breakfast or at tea time. This is the view from the sea deck. Every August, we have these beautiful orchids blooming. They're called the Darwin's orchids. They're literally this big. We spent about 30 minutes in front of a bungalow that had these, drawing from observation. Moving on, here is a panther chameleon crossing the road. We commonly see these guys, especially in the warmer months. They're more active and the males can be very bright in color. I couldn't resist dedicating a whole spread to one of these guys. Next, this is actually the very first spread that I worked on in this sketchbook. I was inspired to illustrate giraffes and showcase interesting facts about them for World Giraffe Day, which is June 21st. I did use alcohol markers for this spread, which did bleed through to the next page, so that's something to be careful of. I really enjoyed making this range map for all the different subspecies, and the gray area is actually the historic range. I then colored in the 3 species that I have seen in person. I made this spread at the very beginning of my time at the lodge. Everything was new and interesting, so I just wanted to draw and sketch as much as possible. Here, I drew an owl. I tried to cover up the blotch that bled through. I didn't get a chance to cover it up completely, but that's how sketchbooks go. They don't have to be perfect. This is my bathroom. It's actually separated from my cabin, and sometimes little critters come in for a visit. This is a very rare species to see in the forest because they're just so good at camouflage, but I was very fortunate to have it in my bathroom a couple times. This is a little unfinished sketch of a moth. Most of the time I'll start my sketches with a light mechanical pencil drawing, and I have a separate eraser because these erasers are just not cutting it on the mechanical pencils. Afterwards, I'll go in with a fine liner and erase the pencil lines and then go in with my water brush afterwards, which is really convenient for traveling. On this page, I had the morning off, so I decided to go on a little sketchbook date. It was my first time being able to explore the coastline, and it was just so beautiful with all the rock formations. And I found this rock, which looks like it has hair on it, and I knew instantly I wanted to draw that. I had so much fun on this little adventure, and I'm really happy with how the painting turned out. On the right-hand side are more journal entries of what I was noticing with the weather and the wildlife. I also noticed these little terrestrial orchids, which pictures weren't doing it justice, so I had to paint them. Here are tiny little red mushrooms. I also painted a couple lowland streaked tenrics, which are super cute and are always a big hit for people who visit the lodge. They kind of look like hedgehogs, but they're their own things. They fill the shrew niche ecologically in this forest. On this next page, the left-hand side is a sketch I didn't complete, but they were some interesting flowers that were blooming around August and September as well. And then on the right-hand side, we have the boat that transports our guests to and from the lodge, and then some rock formations, and also a migratory bird called the Madagascar pratincoal. They come every September to nest. They're just all up and down our coastline. Very beautiful birds and a beautiful call. Okay, here we have one of my favorite pages in this whole sketchbook. Every October in the artist community, there's usually art challenges, Inktober, there's also Birdtober. So my challenge was to do one bird that I see around the lodge every day of October. This next spread really focuses on insects. On the left-hand side, we have 2 stick insects mating. So the female is the big one on the bottom and the male is on top. And they were these really vibrant colors. And this is actually life-size. And they just stuck around the cabin that I was staying at in Makira for a few days. So I drew them from life. And then on the right-hand side, I have some line drawings of insects that I found around the lodge throughout the year. On this next page, I took my sketchbook out to a nearby river mouth. It was one of those days where I wasn't really feeling inspired, but I pushed myself to get out there and create anyway because I usually feel better after making art. And I was really drawn to this rock, which looks like a bird, and the locals call it bird rock, and birds actually nest on it. When people look through my sketchbook, they really love this little illustration on the right-hand side. It's a sea turtle island inspired by an island that we take our guests to as part of our activities at the lodge, and oftentimes we'll see sea turtles there. My favorite subject matter is usually plants and animals and landscapes, but every now and then I will challenge myself to do people and portraits, and that's what this left-hand side is all about, and these are inspired by people that I know in Madagascar. And on this right-hand side, we have one of my favorite places to visit on my break time at the lodge. It's a little beach near my cabin, and I just love this rock formation here with that little gap in the middle. I did this next spread during my vacation at Makira Natural Park. It's the biggest protected area in Madagascar. It's quite a fun journey to get there. It's a 3.5-hour boat ride up the river, and to pass the time, I thought, why not just paint what I see? On the right-hand side, I drew a little map of the journey, how to get there, and also drew some plants and animals that I saw there as well. On this page on the left-hand side, I drew plants at a couple hotels along my travels. This baobab was at Isla, and then these orchids on the left were in Masoala. On the right-hand side, we have tomato frogs, which are only found in the city of Masoala. They are really iconic looking, and I just had to draw them. And then I drew a little THB bottle, which is the national beer of Madagascar. This next spread is a sketchbook date I took myself on. I took the kayak out and went on a little secluded beach and did a full panoramic painting of the view. It was so much fun to do this. I did this right before the end of my first season working at the lodge. Once again, I had a great time drawing the rocks, even though they're a very challenging subject. Here I drew a palm tree in southern Madagascar in a little town called Ifati. On this day, there was a huge party on the beach and lots of people were in the water, so I included them in the painting as well. And then my friend and I took a little road trip across southern Madagascar and we visited Isla National Park, and this is a view from our lodge there. There's these beautiful canyons with forest inside, and then it was also summertime here, so there were storms in the distance, and I really wanted to capture the rain. This was a boat that was also in Ifati outside of the hotel where we stayed at, so I drew that. And then there's a bee eater, which can be found all over Madagascar, but they're more common in the more dry, arid areas. These are some more doodles of things that I've seen in Madagascar. On the left-hand side, we've got more lemur species. Both are different sifakas. We've got a chameleon and somebody enjoying music on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I had bought a sepia ink pen that I wanted to experiment with. That is what these right-hand doodles are. And then my friend drew this little guy down here, which I love and cherish. This little bird is some sort of pheasant that you can see in a hotel called Sakamanga in the capital city of Antananarivo. This is a compilation of some watercolor sketches that I did during my next 2 trips to northern Madagascar, starting in Antananarivo, the capital city where I flew out of. It's a very crowded city with buildings stacked on buildings, and I drew this view from a pub that I was eating at one day. And then from there, I flew up to the northernmost city called Diego in Madagascar, and I did this sketch at the Emerald Sea. You can see that the page before ghosted through, and then these are orchids only found in Amber Mountain National Park. Very beautiful. This is my view from one of the lodges I stayed at in Diego Suarez. I just love the little island in the center of the bay. It's sacred, it's beautiful, and iconic, so I had to paint it. This last painting was done in Nosara, and the full moon was rising, the fishermen were bringing in fish, and I just had to paint it. And it's my favorite painting on this page, I think. These are illustrations of cattle in Madagascar called zebu, so they're a special breed. They have a fat hump on their back. I used purpley blues for the dark colors and then goldish yellow ochre for the lighter colors. I really like this complementary color scheme here. Alright, next. This was a super fun trip I took to an archipelago called Nosara. I started out in Diego and we drove to the west coast and launched a boat. My guide took care of everything from the tents and the food, and we spent 24 hours on this island. And you can see on the map here, I illustrated the route we took. I really wanted to go snorkeling, so these are just some of the fish that I saw. We also saw a couple octopus, which was really exciting. We saw some sea turtles as well, very shy. Oh, there's a lionfish. We stayed the night on this island. They have singy rock formations, which make it very beautiful. And then we also saw this frog, the Montella. We ended up seeing the second smallest chameleon species in the world. They were only this big, very hard to find. I don't know how the guide saw it. I loved this trip so much. Even though it was a challenge to get to because it was rainy season, I think it was so worth it. On this next page, I dedicated it to drawing a bunch of lemurs. So on the left-hand side, we have the blue-eyed black lemurs, which I made a point to go drive 4 extra hours to see. One of the only primates in the world to have blue eyes. The males are black, and then the females are this light brown blonde color, and I got to see them cuddling. Next to them, we have some crowned lemurs playing some Malagasy instruments. These were inspired by some urban lemurs that I saw in Diego. This is a chubby, ruffed lemur on the right-hand side, and I wanted to experiment with watercolor pencils and ended up really loving it. Continuing on, I drew this Madagascar periwinkle, which is a medicinal plant found in Madagascar. Apparently it can cure blood cancer, but I'm not sure about that. This is a chameleon that I drew in the dark. It's a female panther chameleon. And then on the right-hand side, these are all animals that I saw in Dorena. I saw lots of hognose snakes, and I just want to say right now that snakes are the hardest animals for me to draw, and I think it has to do with patience in drawing the scales and getting them right. I've been thinking about this sketch for a long time. I wanted to do a Brookesia leaf litter chameleon in the style of cubism. I just went straight in with watercolor. I didn't do any sketching underneath, and I just slowly built the shapes as they dried. The right-hand side is a underpainting of a mossy leaf-tailed gecko resting on a tree. These guys are the kings of camouflage. I left the gecko unfinished so that I can maybe make it into a coloring page and people can draw in their own camouflage if they like. This spread was inspired by my 11-day trip to Nosy Bay, which is a chain of islands off the coast of northern Madagascar. So I flew in, and this is a map here of the places that I went to. I went down here to Hellville and then visited some islands to see sea turtles and Nosy to see the sandbar and the beautiful views. And then I stayed on Nosy for a few days. This is one of the sea turtles that I saw, and they were just so friendly and unafraid, and I can't believe that I got to snorkel with them. It was honestly one of the most magical experiences of my life. This is a continuation of my time exploring the Nosy Bay area and the surrounding islands. This was done at Luku Bay, the community reserve. So the guide took me by this boat to the entrance of the forest. And then by the time we got out of the forest, the tide had gone way out and the boat was really on the beach. And there was actually a little kingfisher perched on the boat, and I just had to paint that as well. It's so beautiful. And then this next page was done during my stay at Nosy I actually spent the night there, so I had 24 hours, and most people only visit during the day, so late in the afternoon and early in the morning, I had this iconic sandbar to myself, and it actually connects 2 islands at low tide, and it's so beautiful. When I arrived, there was a storm, and the sky was actually darker than the ocean, and I just loved the color palette and the color combinations. Moving on to a very different habitat. This is the driest national park in Madagascar. It's in the southern part of it, and it's called Simonanampetsutsa. Say that name 3 times on repeat and let me know how you do. On the left-hand side, we have the endangered radiated tortoise, and I got to see quite a few of them in the wild, which I feel is a big honor. And then this is the oldest baobab in Madagascar. They call it the grandmother baobab, and that is my crew that I went with. Okay, so on this next page, I accidentally drew these birds upside down. This was a challenge I did. There are 5 ground roller species in Madagascar. They're endemic, and I wanted to draw all of them, but I didn't have much time, so I gave myself a 10-minute time limit on each of these birds. And they're not perfect, but it was a really fun practice to do, is do a timed challenge. You can see the ink from the page before bled through again, so I kind of don't really use that pen on these sketchbooks. This next page was done when I returned for my second season at Masoala Forest Lodge. I wanted to paint these crazy looking trees with these big exposed roots. I did this sitting on a trail nearby my cabin. It was a very wet painting because when you stay there for a long time, everything gets wet and it stays wet. And then the next page is a little painting I did of the guest bungalows. You can see the iconic red hammock that everyone loves. And then I had some extra space, so I tried to do a celestial scene, but I don't really like how it turned out. This next page was done at a place that we call Pineapple Rock. I was babysitting for about an hour, so I took the kids and we took our nature journals and we drew the scene. Towards the end of the stay, the kids were playing on the rocks, so I decided to add them in there. During our time on the beach, the clouds were rolling in, so I had a lot of fun painting the sky in this one. Alright, on the left-hand side here is a little map of the journey that we take from the city, Maransetra, by boat to the lodge. There's no roads here, so it's very remote. Next to it is a very saturated sunset. I love painting sunsets. There's another sunset on the right-hand side that's basically a less finished piece, but I really liked the pastel light colors of it. In between those two sunsets, I painted a malachite kingfisher. I don't like the background so much, and I don't like how the beak is touching the center of the page. I had to include some humpbacks in this sketchbook or else it's not Masoala. They come to the area every year to breed and have babies. I drew a mother and a calf resting in the coral reef, and it's just kind of fun and whimsical. Nice way to finish the sketchbook. Inside the pocket, I have a little watercolor painting, part of a sunset moth wing that I found, and a feather. And those will stay in there forever. And that's it. That's everything, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little sketchbook tour. I had so much fun making this, and there's so many good memories inside. Please let me know if you guys liked this video. I will do some more in the future if you like it. Let me know also what your favorite page or illustration was in this book. I am gonna see you guys next time.